Thank you for allowing me to speak to you guys today. My name is Marc Headley, and I'm here to tell you about a business enterprise. I'm not going to be talking about any religious matters whatsoever. I'm going to be talking to you about an organization that I worked for. I worked there for 15 years, and even after working there for 15 years, not once was I told of the core religious or philosophy basics that they believed in the entire 15 years that I worked there. I worked at the international headquarters of Scientology from 1990 until 2005. And it's in the middle of the desert in California, and it's basically its own city, the city of Gilman Hot Springs, California. The only residents of Gilman Hot Springs are the employees of the international base. Bruce did touch on some of these points, but like he said, we got up around 7:30, 7 o'clock every morning. We worked till about midnight. That was the basic schedule. That was what was required of you, no matter what. Most of the time, we would stay up till 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. and then and oftentimes we would have to stay up all night long, at least 1 or 2 days a week. Sometimes the entire week we'd have to stay up. We'd have to pull all-nighters the entire week in order to get something done. Many times when David Miscavige was there at the property, he would demand that certain things got done, and the entire property was not allowed to sleep until those things were done. So you would have hundreds of people staying up all night, every night. Sometimes it would be arranged that if we were able to take an hour or two nap, that we would be allowed to go down to where the buses were and sleep in a bus for an hour if we could arrange it, if we could have somebody cover what we were doing for that amount of time so that we could get an hour's sleep. If people didn't perform the work that was required of them, there was no limit of penalties that could be handed out: verbal abuse, attacks, violence. Staff members were not only physically assaulted by David Miscavige, but he himself encouraged others to assault other staff members. So if you weren't getting beat up by him, you were getting beat up by somebody that he was encouraging to beat you up. So it was a very violent environment. And even as of a few months ago, spokespersons for the Scientology organization admit that over 50 physical assaults actually occurred there at the international headquarters. They actually admit to it. They admit that David Miscavige had people thrown into pools. One of the holdovers, Hannah touched on this briefly, which is this practice that L. Ron Hubbard wrote, which was throwing people overboard. The Sea Organization, because it originated and started at sea, they had this practice of throwing people overboard. Well, since we had long since moved from the sea and we were in the middle of the desert, the only way you could throw somebody overboard was to throw them in the swimming pool that existed at the property. And literally on one occasion, we had several hundred people were gotten up in the middle of the night and ordered to come in because David Miscavige wanted to speak with them. And one by one, we were thrown into the swimming pool in the middle of the night to be thrown overboard, because that's the only way they could do it in the desert. The Scientology organization has admitted that this actually did occur and that it did take place. I wrote a book, and in the book I detail many of these experiences. And when they heard some of these things were in the book, they flat out denied that they took place. And sure enough, now in the few recent months, they're now admitting slowly that yes, this took place, and yes, that took place, and they are admitting that these things actually do happen. I worked there for 15 years, and in the 15 years of working over 100 hours a week, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, I was paid a total of $29,000 for the entire 15 years. That averages out to about 38 cents an hour, and that doesn't include staying up late till 3 or 4 in the morning or staying up all night. That's just if I went to midnight. When I left in 2005, the very first year that I was no longer in Scientology, I made more in that first year than I made in the entire 15 years of my Sea Org career. Someone did the math, and the amount of hours that I worked in 15 years was as if I was working a 9-to-5 job for 40 years in the real world. In 15 years. I'm not even 40 years old, and I've already worked 40 years of a 9-to-5 job, if you just count the amount of hours that I've worked for the Scientology organization. When you work for the Scientology organization, there's certain things that most people take for granted that Sea Org members are not allowed to have in any way, shape, or form. Bruce mentioned you're only allowed to read L. Ron Hubbard. Additionally, you're not allowed to have any contact with the outside world that it's unfiltered. Any mail that is coming into the international headquarters is opened by security personnel and read before you get it. Any of your outgoing mail, you are not allowed to seal an envelope. You have to write a letter and put it in an envelope and leave it open so that security personnel can read your mail, and if they deem it okay, then they will seal it and mail it for you. Personal legal documents are locked up: passports, visas, driver's license, anything that would allow you to operate or exist in the outside world is kept by them for safekeeping. Women employees who become pregnant are coerced or forced to have abortions. Children are absolutely forbidden within the Sea organization. During the time that I worked there, my wife had 2 separate abortions, one of which I didn't even find out about until several months after it had happened. She was not allowed to consult with me or even tell me that she was pregnant. She had to have the abortion, and I found out literally, I think, 8 months after it had happened, because they were worried that I would attempt to leave or take my wife and leave with us. People aren't allowed to come and go as they please. There is razor wire fences that surround the entire compound at the international headquarters. They have motion sensors on the fences. They have ground microphones in the ground, and they have very high-powered security lights that surround the entire perimeter of the property. During the 15 years that I worked there, I probably witnessed hundreds of people who either escaped or tried to escape, or escaped and were recaptured. When people escape from the compound, they are literally hunted like animals. I witnessed on one occasion a gentleman who left in the middle of the night, and he ran into the nearby desert, and he was recovered by security personnel who were wearing night vision goggles. And they literally found him hiding in a hole in the ground and brought him back to the compound. People that leave there and successfully get away into a nearby town, they check the bus stations, they check the airports, they check the local hotels. They have, if you do happen to have a credit card or any sort of electronic financial means, they have that. They are monitoring that. So as soon as you make a purchase, they know exactly where you are. They have access to flight records because they have their own travel agent, which is a member of any airline that flies anywhere he's a member of, and he can pull up any flight information. He can find out what flight you're on, and they can have somebody there. They have people that work for the airlines, so even if they can't find it, they can have somebody at the airlines pull up the information. And like I said, this is not something that just happened a few times while I was there. This happened hundreds of times where people tried to escape and were hunted down. The security guards at the property are informed that if they see anyone who is trying to escape over the fence, they are to physically pull them off the fence and return them to the property. When I escaped in 2005, I actually managed to get away on a motorcycle. And as I was driving out from the compound, I was immediately being followed by a security SUV.